Today's the 21st day of March 2025. Clock on the wall says it's 1:45 in the afternoon. And Mirth mission 2025-03 is underway. So iterating.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's two basic constructs to play with
Okay.
in this session, and then a bunch of other stuff too. But the first one is it's a scheme of two rings.
Yeah.
So imagine concentric rings.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, you'll notice that at least there's three spaces.
Yep.
There's the one in the center, there's the
One in between.
intermediary, and then there's everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And that middle space, there's a bunch of different names for it.
Mm-hmm.
Do any occur to you? Do any?
It reminds me of a schema from like middle school in health class where it was, I guess, socially speaking, there was your influence on yourself, and then close relatives and friends, and then everyone else.
Okay,
But I
so
don't
that
remember
had
the
to
name
do
of
with
it.
influence. So it was addressing influence.
Yep. That's all that comes to mind, though.
So the one that I've been playing with the most is a developmental construct,
Okay.
as in at the center, that's something like you're perfectly comfortable.
Mm.
And then everything else outside of the intermediary space is like trauma or damage.
Okay.
So thinking in terms of development.
Mm-hmm.
So the in-between, the liminal space, is, you can refer to it as, I've been taught and it makes sense for me to refer to it as the zone of proximal development.
Right.
It's that zone that is proximal to me, immediately adjacent to that zone of perfect comfort, which is imaginary. Like, you never really, I don't know about you, but I don't ever feel perfectly comfortable.
Get pretty close.
Yeah, me too. But I notice that it oscillates in and out.
Sure.
So zone of proximal development is also known as the zone of demonstrated incompetence.
Sure.
It's where you're practicing.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna fail
Mm-hmm.
to some extent. Okay, so that's a theme for this mission. And then I wish I could remember what the text was for sure that I had associated. Do you remember what it was?
Oh, that you referenced.
So January was breathe, I think. February was comfort crisis. And yeah, I don't remember for sure in this moment, which is embarrassing. So that's a failure. So right there, that's a demonstration of operating in the zone of proximal development, also known as the zone of demonstrated incompetence.
Yeah.
It's written it down. I have pictures of the stack of books deliberately ordered out.
Yep.
It's my freaking curriculum. Why am I not able to associate it in the moment? Because I'm incompetent in that particular capacity in this session.
Yeah.
It's completely correctable. It'll be an easy gain. I'll probably never forget again after this session. I'll go look it up.
Yep.
It'll get lodged.
Yep.
Okay.
It's like names. I feel like to fully remember someone's name. I have to get it wrong in front of them at least once.
So what I want to do, yeah, you have to be utterly embarrassed, and then it's like, okay, move on. So I'd like to take, I think, like 3, no more than 5 minutes, and just throw some ideas out about the actual conduct of the mission in the field of mirth. So I've definitely got ideas. Are there any that seem obvious to you, or that you're curious about, intrigued by? Keeping in mind that we're going to iterate on this. So if everything goes according to plan, we'll do this again next year.
Yeah, on the theme, you mentioned the bluff. I think zone of proximal development in regards to being on the bluff, most personally, has to do with scaling the thing.
Both up and down?
Sure. Specifically with balancing and keeping my footing. So when I'm going down, like there's not a single time I've gone down that bluff, I don't think, without slipping at least once. So that to me is proximal development, even though I'm familiar with most of the trails there. It's still something that I demonstrate incompetence in regards to. So that's a good growing opportunity. Yeah, that's the only thing that comes to mind immediately.
Okay, so I'm perfectly happy focusing on the bluff. That's one of my favorite zones, and it's also one of the richest in terms of developmental opportunities.
Yeah.
So let's further develop that and say, okay, what else occurs to you in terms of, is there anything that has occurred to you to do that we haven't ever done there yet?
We haven't, I don't think we've sufficiently made a game out of it.
Okay, so mission objective 1 then is to establish at least a rudimentary form of game to play on the bluff.
Yeah.
Okay, so then let's quickly talk about the ideas of finite and infinite games.
Okay.
So in relation to this particular mission, is there any intuition as to whether to focus on one or the other, or do we just set that aside entirely for now?
My gut tells me finite.
Mine too.
Okay.
So let's just go with that.
Cool.
So the finite, so the measure of time is an easy constraint to make it a finite game.
Yep.
So are there any obvious applications of time in relation to play on the bluff?
Just like a race.
In relation to
who's fastest time-wise, and a start and end point.
Okay, so now let's talk about how you take so what's occurring to me live in this dialogue with you right now is that zone of proximal development, zone of demonstrated incompetence, is you impose the constraint, but then you also open up simultaneously an opportunity to make it an infinite game. So you've said, here's the edges of the finite game, well defined, pass fail, and then then the next thing that you do is say, okay, what can I do within that frame to also fulfill the tenets of an infinite game? Do you remember what those are?
Not specifically. Infinite game to me just is something that there's not a winner or a loser, but it's just a constant development. It's kind of like training.
Well, okay, so there's 2 things that I want to draw quick attention to on the finite infinite thing.
Okay.
So one is you just said training. So I'm pretty sure in that text it makes a distinction. The author, I wish I could remember his name. Do you remember what it is?
No.
We should give proper attribution. It's right here. So the guy's name is James P. Carse. Finite and Infinite Games.
Cool.
It's a tiny book. It's really easy to get through. It's a very powerful book. It's a very powerful system of ideas. So I'm going to go with my own rather than reading something off of there. I'm going to go with my understanding of it, and then that can be corrected as necessary. So there's another opportunity for development. So we've given proper attribution, which is a really important principle so that's like a Crawford built foundation.
Yep.
Foundational principle, first principle. Give proper attribution. Finite games, as I understand them, come to a definite end.
Yep.
They're pass-fail, win-lose,
Yep.
zero-sum. The object of a finite game is to end the game
Right.
while occupying the superior or winning, we say, position. That's a finite game.
Sure.
An infinite game, the objectives are at least twofold, as I understand it. The first objective is to keep the game going. And then the second objective is to make the game more enjoyable for all of the participants involved.
Right.
So how do you keep the game going indefinitely and simultaneously increase satisfaction as derived through the process of playing for all players? So over the long term, it's you can see how that's obviously a more interesting
Yeah.
form of game.
Totally.
Okay, so then back to the bluff. Oh, the other distinction, sorry. So out of Carse's authorship, training is associated with finite games.
Interesting.
You know what the construct is. You know how to win. How are you going to win if you don't know what the rules are?
Yeah.
You can't. Okay. So then he does careful work to distinguish and say, what you do in relation to those types of games is train, because you're training to win.
Okay.
An infinite game, you practice, play. So there's a word association there
Sure.
for probably, I don't know if this is the right word to use, but I think it is. It's right there. Has to do with teaching. I lost it. It's like
Tautological?
yeah, there's another word too though. There's a development opportunity.
Okay.
Find the right word for that. Pedagogical. I think it's pedagogical.
That's
So
right.
for pedagogical purposes, I'm trying to do very succinct word associations. Infinite,
Yep.
practice.
Yep.
Finite, train. Finite, train. Infinite, practice.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got timed routes. So then those address the finite part. So then on the infinite part, how do you imagine playing infinite games on the bluff?
Say building routes, developing them. So if we had people run down the bluff, time them, see who got the best, And then as we go back up, we review, how'd your run go? What parts did you like? What parts flowed well? What could be changed? In
Yeah.
the route, that would make it better. We move a log out of the way. We put a log in the way. Stuff like that.
Yeah, require. So the other things that occur are requiring that you hit certain targets or collect certain
Sure.
things along the way, which could be anything. It's be like get a picture of a bird on your
Right.
path, or it could be find a certain kind of mushroom, or we could plant tennis balls, or Easter eggs, or
Right. Yeah.
what else do they call those? Like in video games, they used to be called Easter eggs. Is that-
Easter eggs. Yeah, that's still pretty much what they're called. Easter eggs.
It's like the little bonus finds.
Yeah, there's just Easter eggs. Like, because there's usually not. The thing about Easter eggs is that there's not a reward other than the thing itself. Easter eggs works.
Which is less. Okay, so that's where we can get into mystery. So, and this is another distinction that is also very helpful pedagogically, I think, as well as I would be so bold as to say affording the making of meaning itself.
Okay.
So you say the only reward is finding them, that like in and of themselves. So what if you were to discover today that all of the Easter eggs that you have uncovered in your play in life so far suddenly snapped into a meaningful form, in that you were actually able to apply them unexpectedly in another game that you weren't even aware you were party to. So that's pretty abstract. So let me just give an example.
Okay.
So there's the field of mirth is vast. The bluff is one arena within the field of mirth. You can only take people so far in any given increment of time. You can only convey so much meaning. If you concentrate meaning into artifacts, so imagine like a treasure map. So you can take something, like you can make a treasure map out of practically any material or set of materials. So if you take and you create the whole map and then you break it into pieces, it might be made out of rocks and feathers and who knows, like what all you might use to construct the map.
Sure.
Then you take those artifacts and you make them Easter eggs in proximal local games. So then the players are collecting those over time, which could be across missions, could be across iterations of missions across years.
Yeah.
Where I really like the dungeon master. What would you characterize that as a
Roll.
yeah? So that dungeon master role is like that kind of is like a myth maker or storyteller role. So if the myth maker takes, like you have to do the work. You have to say, okay, this is the longer term arc of the story. It only takes two of those players together to basically now become cross-generational, which is like, okay, now you're playing with potentially a truly infinite game.
Right.
At least insofar as time is concerned.
Yeah.
You following that?
Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
So then, yeah. So you start to notice I think you've probably started to pick up on this, where you can see it in the evolution of literature, where you'll see that, oh, there's these little cohorts that show up
Yeah.
in different generations that appear to be actually playing across the centuries with one another.
You mean like these guys?
Maybe.
Maybe. Only time will tell. Sure. Well, that's definitely something
Okay, so
that we could plan out.
well, so I think we are.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing
yeah.
right now. So back to this, this mission that we're in the midst of and are running, and we'll get into the thick of it tomorrow. So imagine that construct of the treasure map. Imagine creating the map out of artifacts. Imagine locating artifacts on the bluff. Imagine a player collecting one or more of said artifacts. Imagine that player returning. Well, it could be across time, or it could be as simple as within the same mission itself. So where I was originally going with this was, you set up the entire field of Mirth such that the deeper meaning within the artifact is revealed as the player moves out of the specific arena.
Right.
Okay, you following where I'm going with this? Okay.
Big plot reveal.
Yes. So that becomes a deeply engaging.
For sure.
So let's
Muse on that.
do at least an attempt. Let's tomorrow
Yeah.
imagine a little more, sketch out. For sure. Okay.
Cool.
Anything further? I'd like you to have the closing remarks here for what we're doing. Or is there anything further you want to explore? We got about 7 minutes left to play.
Very engaging. I think you're right. I think there needs to be, if we're going to do it well, what you're talking about, there needs to be a level of intention to every piece, because it just becomes exponentially meaningful
Yeah.
the more thought you put into it.
Yeah, and I would say care.
Yeah.
Thought and care into the craft. So to me, this is what distinguishes Crawford built. It is that. It is the careful crafting.
Sure.
So the care across iterations. So
Cool.
you seem like you're ready to be done.
Yeah, Gavin just texted me, so I should probably get going. Gotta let the car warm up and oil check it first.
Is he gonna make it?
What do you mean? Oh, no.
For sure. He's bowed out.
I haven't told him about it. I can.
Yeah,
But-
please do extend the invitation.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a great player.
I agree.
Yeah, which reminds me, is there anybody else that needs the extension of an invitation?
No, they're all working, and I'll let them know, but I seriously doubt any of them will be available.
Okay.
Because they're also going through, Daniel and Logan are doing finals right now. They're kind of cramming.
Okay.
Anyway, I like it.
Yep.
I like the storytelling. It's fun.
Yeah. Me too.
Okay,